Imagine two professional wine experts guys with decades of tasting experience between them, sitting at a table with 12 bottles lined up in front of them. 6 from Costco, 6 from Trader Joe's. And within minutes of pouring one of those wines, one of them says, and I quote, "The person who made this should go to jail." The other one agrees and suggests they should be boiled in a vat of it. That's not a review. That's a verdict. And the wild part, that bottle is probably sitting on a shelf somewhere in America right now, being dropped into someone's cart for dinner tonight. So before you spend another dollar on bargain wine, you need to hear exactly what these two experts found when they pulled back the curtain on store-brand bottles. Because some of it will save you money, some of it will genuinely shock you. And at least one discovery might change how you shop for wine for the rest of your life. Let's start where most of us start, the sparkling aisle. First up, 2 Proseccos, pale yellow, bubbling gently, looking innocent enough. But here's the thing, one of the experts admitted, flat out, he doesn't love Prosecco, and he gave a reason that's going to stick with you whether you want it to or not. There's a specific flavor compound that shows up on the finish of many cheap Proseccos, and professional tasters describe it, politely, as baby vomit. Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't make the rules of wine chemistry, but once you know what to smell for, you literally cannot unsmell it. That's not snobbery. That's a real aromatic compound tied to certain yeasts and fermentation choices, and it's incredibly common in budget Prosecco. Now here's what's surprising. The first bottle turned out to be the Kirkland Asolo Prosecco, and Asolo is actually a cru. In plain English, that means it's from one of the better designated zones in the Prosecco region, a legitimate step up from your standard DOC Prosecco. So for about $8, you're getting a wine from a higher tier appellation, which, credit where it's due, is a real bargain on paper. It's scored in the low to mid-80s. Drinkable, clean, decent acidity, not exciting, but not embarrassing either. Then came the Trader Joe's Prosecco, darker, floral, more body. And here's where it gets really interesting. Even though this one was labeled Brut, which technically means drier, it actually tasted sweeter than the extra dry Kirkland. Wait, what? Yeah. This is one of those wine mysteries that has a genuinely fascinating answer. When a wine has riper fruit and lower acidity, your brain perceives it as sweeter even when the actual sugar content is lower. Acidity is what gives you that crisp, dry bite on the tongue. Take the acid away, and every gram of sugar suddenly feels like 3. It's a perception trick that budget winemakers understand deeply, and now you do too. But here's the bigger lesson from round 1. Both experts agreed, if you love Prosecco, either of these will work, especially ice-cold at a party. But if you care about quality per dollar, there are better paths. Traditional method sparkling wines, Cava from Spain, even entry-level champagne when it goes on sale. These use a second fermentation inside the bottle itself, creating finer bubbles and real toasty complexity. Prosecco is made in big pressurized tanks, which is faster, cheaper, and at the bottom shelf, exactly why the results can feel hollow. So the next time you reach for cheap bubbles, pause for 3 seconds and ask yourself, could a $7 Cava make me happier tonight? The answer is almost always yes. Okay, now brace yourself because round 2 is where this tasting got genuinely exciting. 2 Sauvignon Blancs, both from New Zealand, both around $7, one from Trader Joe's, one the Kirkland Marlborough, and the experts actually lit up. Scores in the high 80s for $7 wines. That's borderline shocking. The first had a little skin contact grip on the finish, giving it texture and a slightly bitter edge. The second was paler, brighter, more elegant, with that classic New Zealand lime and freshly cut grass character that put Marlborough on the global map in the first place. And here's where one expert dropped a piece of wisdom that might completely change how you shop this category. He used to import these wines professionally, and he told us, flat out, he prefers the cheap Marlborough Sauvignon Blancs over the famous expensive ones. Why? Because the premium bottles are often so aggressive, so overwhelmingly grassy and tropical that they steamroll everything else in the glass. The budget versions can't afford that concentration, so they end up more balanced, more elegant, easier to drink with actual food. Read that again, the cheap one is often the better dinner wine. That's not a consolation prize. That's how the economics of Marlborough actually work, and nobody tells you that standing in front of the shelf. Now, here comes the part you need to sit down for. The Chardonnays. Glasses poured nose in, and within seconds the room turned into a crime scene. Rancid popcorn, microbially unsound, toxic stew. Those were the actual words used. One expert literally said the first bottle caused him emotional pain. The Trader Joe's Growers Reserve Chardonnay at $5.99. It scored a 0. Not a typo. 0 points. Unscorable. The Kirkland Chardonnay at $7.99 crawled across the finish line with 65 to 67 points, which in professional wine scoring basically means please do not buy this, we are begging you. Now pause, are these guys just being snobs? Totally fair question. But here's why this matters for your wallet and your weeknight dinner. That rancid popcorn smell and harsh bitterness aren't personal preferences, they're often signs of actual winemaking problems. Cheap oak chips instead of barrels, fruit from overheated vineyards where acid has collapsed, additives to paper over what's missing. These are flaws, not quirks. And the cruelest part. The Trader Joe's label talked about peach, melon, stone fruit notes, subtle vanilla oak, a well-balanced finish, beautifully written, complete fiction. So why are the Chardonnays this much worse than the Sauvignon Blancs at almost the same price? Here's the honest answer, and this might be the single most useful thing you'll hear all week. Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon are the two most demanded grape names on the planet. Everybody knows them, everybody buys them. Which means when a producer tries to hit a rock-bottom price, they're cutting corners on the most demanding, most quality-sensitive grapes in the world. You're not buying Chardonnay at that price. You're buying a caricature of Chardonnay dressed up to ride on the fame of the name. Which leads to the single biggest takeaway of this entire tasting. If you want to drink well on a budget, stop chasing the famous names. Just stop. Step away from the cheap Cabernet and the bargain Chardonnay and start exploring. Grillo from Sicily. Old Vine Chenin Blanc from Swartland in South Africa, which can give you real complexity for under $15. Sauvignon Blanc and Chenin from the Loire Valley, where whole oceans of beautifully made wine are produced at modest prices. Portuguese Whites, Spanish Verdejo. Austrian Gruner Veltliner. These grapes don't carry a global fame tax, which means the money you spend goes into the actual wine, not into paying for a label everyone recognizes. Here's another tip that came up during the tasting, and I think it's gold. The grocery store closeout section. When a store slashes wine by 50 to 75% after a holiday, you can walk out with genuinely beautiful bottles for the price of forgettable ones. One of the experts described watching another shopper walk right past a shelf of deeply discounted quality wines to grab a full-price bottle of commercial Chardonnay he already knew. Don't be that shopper, check the tags, scan the end caps, the real deals are hiding in plain sight, and most people walk right past them. Now, before we wrap this up, I want to be clear about something, because I don't want this to come across the wrong way. None of this is about being a wine snob. If you love ice-cold Prosecco at a summer barbecue, drink it and love every sip. If a specific bottle makes your Tuesday feel like a Friday, that's literally the whole point of wine. But what this tasting really exposes is the gap between a $7 bottle that's made with care and a $7 bottle that's engineered to hit a shelf price. Knowing that difference will save you from years of quietly mediocre wine nights. And better, it opens the door to a much bigger, more interesting world of flavors and regions most American shoppers have never touched. One more thing before you go. If you consistently find wine disappointing, but keep buying the same supermarket favorites out of habit, give yourself permission to break the pattern this week. Walk into a wine shop or even the wine section at Costco or Trader Joe's and ask one simple question. Hey, I usually drink this. What's something new in this price range you actually love? Most wine people are quietly dying to answer that question. That one conversation could completely change your relationship with wine. And remember this, no bottle should ever make you feel like you need to be paid to finish the glass. If a wine hurts to drink, pour it out, log the lesson, and move on. Life is too short, and there are too many honest, delicious bottles in the world to grind through bad ones out of stubbornness. The final scoreboard from 12 bottles and 2 very honest palates is brutally simple. The Sauvignon Blancs punched far above their weight. The Proseccos were fine for what they are, and the Chardonnays, your money is better spent almost anywhere else on earth. So if this saved you from your next bad bottle, or finally gave you a smarter way to shop the wine aisle, do me one small favor. Hit that subscribe button. I break down real tastings, real research, and honest practical advice like this every single week. No hype, no fluff. Just useful information to help you drink better, spend smarter, and actually enjoy what ends up in your glass. I'll see you in the next one.